Hi, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm an engineer on the Unity Analytics team, and I'm going to talk to you today. The talk will be in two parts. I'm going to start about custom events and custom event best practices, and then I'm going to move into talking about Heatmaps, which is a project I'm very excited about. The flames at the bottom, I thought looked like flames. I look at them now, and I think it looks like Donald Trump's hair. So what are you going to do? All right. So the big news with 5.2, and the one that I think we really want to make sure you take home, if you take nothing else home from this whole thing, is Unity Analytics is right inside Unity now. It's a single flip of a switch. So everything else I say is sugar on top of that. You get, I don't know how many people were here for Dylan's talk just now? Almost all of you, OK. So Dylan went over a lot of this stuff like retention, day 1, day 7 retention, things like session length, things like daily actives, all that sort of stuff. That switch, boom, you're in. And that's what's important here, right? We're talking about getting you into analytics quickly and easily. Now, there's a caveat. Caveat is we can only do automatic stuff on things that are obvious, automatic. Does a player turn on your game? Well, that's easy for us to track. Device intelligence, we can know about the devices that people are tagging in on. But your game's unique. Your game isn't like the game I made or the game somebody else made. Your game is your own thing, and we can't know in advance that you need to think about when a level is complete, say, because we don't know what a level complete means within the context of your game. We don't know when you killed the big boss. We don't know when you scored a goal in your soccer game, whatever it is. All those things, we don't know those, so that's what I'm going to go into over the course of this talk, is what we call custom events. And custom events are the things that allow you to do all of these unique things. As I go into it, I'll start with the easy stuff, kind of just explain what they're for and how they work, and some ways you can use them. And then we're going to get progressively more advanced, and then we're going to see some really cool things by the end of what you can do with custom events and why they're awesome, and that will take us into the Heatmaps feature as well. OK, so what can custom events do for me? These are the 3 things that custom events do in our dashboard, and I'm going to very quickly take you through them. The first one's the Data Explorer. The Data Explorer is basically a place where you can see not just your custom events, but things including your custom events, and get lots of quick, easy metrics on how often a custom event was fired and what the parameters were that were attached to it. Lots of quick information about that. Dylan went into funnels in some detail, so since most of you are here, I'm not going to talk too much about what a funnel is, but funnels are driven by custom events, so everything is when the user triggered level complete, maybe with a value of 2, meaning that they completed level 2, I want them to say enter a funnel or enter a funnel step. And that's a great way of figuring out where flows within your game are working or are not working. And then another thing we can do is we can actually segment based on custom events. So you can build a segment. So we have automatic segments like players in America or Japan, players on certain platforms, players on who've played your game or returned to your game over a certain amount of time or spent a certain amount of money. All those things are pretty much built in for you. You can build custom segments that fit your particular use case. You want to know about players in Botswana, or you want to know about players between a certain age range. There are a lot of things that might be unique to your game, but we can get exceptionally unique when we start looking at them from the point of view of custom events. The user who triggered a certain event with a certain set of parameters, those are the people who fit into a segment. And you can even add to that what I just said plus, and they're in Croatia. Right? So you can or they're on iOS, and they're on Android. So you can build up these custom segments to create a picture of your game and how people play your game. All right, so let's get into the custom events themselves. And the first thing I want to talk about is limits. Now, my boss is sitting right there, and he asked me to specify something, because I'm going to give you a bunch of numbers here. And he's laughing, but it's true. All of these numbers, these are kind of suggestions more than laws. Nothing's written in stone. We are playing around with these numbers. We also really want to accommodate you. So if you don't feel you're going to fit within this, contact us, and we will make sure that we work with you to get something that works for you. But the basics of our numbering system, the stuff out of the box, is you can send 100 events per device per hour. Right? That's simple enough. You got a device, sends events, 100 of them per hour. That's what we limit you to. That's remote configurable, meaning we can change that on our side per app. So if you have an app that needs more, say, I don't know, for Heatmaps, that might be a thing. 10 parameters per event, which is to say that I said that every event, like your level completed event, could have a level parameter attached to it, could have maybe a gold parameter attached to it, a hit points parameter, whatever the things are you need. You get 10 of those. And then when the data gets serialized to JSON, there's a 500-character limit on that. I don't know if we've ever had anybody actually hit up against that. It's a lot of data to throw in a single event. You're probably not doing yourself any favors if you have that much data in the event anyway, so just bear that in mind. And then we have this thing called analysis points. Now, I'll tell you right now, analysis points is a bit of a tricky concept, and I've written it up there what it means. It's the unique combinations of the event name, the parameter name, and the non-numeric parameter value. What the hell does that even mean? So you have an event like level complete. You have a parameter name like, let's say, level ID. And then you have the value of that. That might be level 1. That's an analysis point. Right? It's a unique combination of those values. Numbers are excluded from that. We give you a buy on numbers because obviously numbers are going to run out into a roughly infinite number of combinations. So know that that's there. Please don't stress about that too much. As I say, these are all suggestions. I want you to know it's there because this is a talk on best practices, and one of the things I'm going to talk about is how you can maximize your analysis points. So we want you to keep within this, mostly so you don't flood our system. We're trying to make everything this work. This basically is a conversation, right? This isn't us dictating what the rules are. This is us suggesting what we think works. You come back to us. We try and work it out. And so with the analysis points, we want to try and keep you within that 1,000 number. It's an arbitrary number, but it's designed to keep you from flooding our system with too much stuff. So the analysis points is a representation of the amount of processing we have to do on your data. And one way that we don't have to process as much is when you use numbers. So if you're sending us events with like gold, hit points, things that can be summed and averaged, numbers will cost you less in analysis points than strings and booleans. Booleans will cost you exactly 2, true and false. Strings will cost you as many as you send us. Therefore, when you send us strings, try not to send us things that maybe have an infinite number of possible values, user identification IDs that are big, long hashes or something. If you keep it to logical things that actually are meaningful within your game, you're going to get a lot more out of the mileage on your analysis points, and you won't have to have the conversation with us in which we say, really, did you have to go over the limit? And then, we cry and we work it out for you. OK, so now, the main focus of the first half of this talk anyway, the second half, as I say, Heatmaps, but the main focus of the first half is best practices. How are you going to use your custom events? Who here has actually integrated Unity Analytics? Really? Wow, OK, not that many. Most of them are like working for my team over there down here. OK, so I don't even want to ask. How many people have actually sent a custom event? Not you guys. I forget. 1, 2. OK, only a few people. All right. So I will actually, you know what? I'm going to go off script a little, and I'm going to go straight to the code, because I want you guys to see how this works. It's really simple. I was planning to go to the code. I'm just going to do it a little earlier than I was originally planning. And let's go here. Let me put on my glasses, because I'm blind without them. OK, so here's an example of a custom event. The first thing you need to do with this is that line I've just highlighted right there. You have to say using Unity Analytics. UnityEngine.analytics, and that makes it available to you. As of 5.2, when you turn that switch off and on, that actually builds the Unity Analytics code into your game. So you switch it on, you switch it off, you can actually see a difference in how the analytics work. The next thing you're going to do is, it's really, all of this boils down to one line of code. It's analytics.custom-event, you give it a name, and optionally, you attach a dictionary. Right? Now, all this other stuff is, obviously, I've got the instantiation here of a dictionary. And then I'm giving the dictionary some values to send out. But what it boils down to is that line right there, right? The rest of this is basically boilerplate or the particulars of my game. My game happens to have a level ID and gold and some Boolean called found key. Apparently, I found the key. No idea what that means. But you do, because it's your game. All right, I'm going to go back onto my script again. And having shown you how a custom event, what it looks like. So what are you going to send in these custom events? Well, in my opinion, the cardinal rule of events is consistency. Everything should be about consistency. And I'm going to talk about a few types of consistency over the next couple of slides. The first one, and the one that I really, really, really urge you to think about is don't create the same event with different parameters attached to it. We get this from time to time, and it's a real pain. It means your data is hard to interpret. It's hard for you to interpret. It's hard for us to interpret. If you're missing, as in this slide, you're missing one of the parameters at the bottom, your averages are going to come out really screwy because all those ones were killed didn't appear. They're probably going to translate into zeros, and now you're going to get a whole bunch of your data is not going to be the way you think it is. When it pops out on the other end, when you're seeing it in the dashboard, you want consistency. So make sure that for any given event, you are sending us a standard set of, a consistent set of parameters. Now, I want you to be even more consistent than that. This isn't so much the first one was sort of a technical bit of consistency. If you're not being consistent, it's going to be hard for you to interpret the data. This is for you. This is for you and your team and for you 6 months from now. So you sent an event and you called, in the first case, I said level started or level completed. Those are consistent. They both are talking about the level and a thing that happened on the level. The second one, not so good. Start level and level over. Later on, when I'm trying to pair up these events and make sense out of what did those mean to me, that's going to be a lot harder. I don't know what I meant. I don't know what somebody else who may have been programming meant. So being really consistent with how you use the system will mean that the data that comes out on the other end will be more reliable and you'll be a happier person. I also want to make the point that an event is a thing that happens, right? It's an event, just like a party, like the party that's going to happen later. Don't forget to bring your passport if you're from out of town. All right. It's a thing that happened. They asked me to say that. It's a thing that happened. So level completed is a thing that happened. Level is not a thing that happened. Level is what? Did it start? Did it end? If I say, if the event is called sword, well, did he draw it? Did he buy it? Did he drop it? What does that mean? Make your events, there's no cost particularly, at least no appreciable cost in being clear. So make sure that when you send us the events, and really, you're sending, I say us, you're sending yourself the event. We're the intermediary. Okay. I also suggest that you keep your characters simple. Avoid all those characters that are non-standard. To be really blunt with you, we may have missed a character to support. You might hit across something. But also, it's harder for you if you start using things like a colon. Could get in the way of a JSON structure. If you use a hyphen, it might be misconstrued by somebody for an en dash. If you use a space, somebody might add a second space, and you wouldn't notice it for ages, and you're like, why are my events not processing? Why do I only have half the number of events? Keep it really simple, and I actually think for most cases, and this is a bug, and by the way, I'm going to be really totally honest with you about some stuff we've done wrong, and we're only human, we've made some mistakes. There's a bug here, and this in the previous slide are basically talking about this. We have a problem specifically with parameter names, not with parameter values, not with event names, just with parameter names, where the capitalization is not preserved. It was something that crept in. We found out about it. We're working on it. Turns out it's a little harder than we thought to fix. So using just underscores and snake casing, hey, you're good. You're never gonna have to deal with the problem. So I think it's really good to just keep it really simple. OK, now, this is a gotcha. I should have said this up front. I'm going to talk about bugs. I'm going to talk about things we've done wrong. And so, we're not shy about it. We'll fix these things as we can. But we're a small team. So this one, you could argue this is a bug, but in any event, I really want you to know about it, and I want you to not get caught by it. When you send us a parameter value, we perform a cast on it, right? We basically look at it, and we say, oh, looks like a number to me. All those things up there look like a number to us, because Java will cast those, and it looks like a number to Java. So even if you've put it into a string, even if you've attached some letters at the end of it, that cast is going to cause you trouble. So how do you fix that in a cast in Java? Well, you add characters on the front, and then it gets treated as a string. So the practical effect of that is, if you want numbers, right? If you want something that can be aggregated, added, divided, averaged out, use numbers. That's the correct use of numbers. If you want something that can be categorized, like a level, because I presume you do not want to know the average level your user was working at, but rather that they were on level 9 or on level 8. Those are categorizable things. Use strings, and make sure that you treat them as strings by prefixing them with some letters. All right, garbage collection. This is not our, for once, not our mistake. This is just a thing you got to know about. Everyone here, I hope, knows what garbage collection is. You create an object. When the object gets destroyed, at some point, it's got to get cleaned up. Can cause a certain amount of slowdown in your system. So to be a good citizen with yourself, rather than sending a dictionary over and over again every time you send the custom event, we recommend that you simply do the smart thing, create a dictionary for your project, for your mono behavior, and just recycle it. We serialize off the data. When you say analytics.custom-event, we serialize that data off, so there's no danger that that dictionary will get written over, or the values will be lost. So recommended use. All right. Now, this is a personal favorite of mine. I really love the whole notion of separation of concerns. I'm a dependency injection guy, and I am into like keeping everything in its box. And my boss is laughing down here. He's like, yeah, he does. We should shut up about it. So separation of concerns. Get your try when you can. Try and pull your analytics out of the rest of your code. Try not to make it a part of the spaghetti, right? We all know we're working on our games, we're building stuff, and time pressures are tight, and we've got code on top of code and thing on top of code. Try and separate out the concerns. Keep your, I believe it's sensible in most cases to put your custom events in a separate mono behavior attached to the same thing that's doing. So if, for example, if I've got a death event, right? Actually, I believe that was the custom event I was showing you a moment ago. I believe was a bot death event or something like that. Oh no, the one later will be. So the bot death event. Well, put a custom event in your onDestroy method, right? Now but it'll be in its own mono behavior that's sole concern is scoring those analytics. Then much easier to pull out later and separate it out from the rest of your code. All right, so that covers my best practices talk. That's basically me taking a paper that we wrote and spinning it out into a few points for you guys today. Now I'm going to get into some more advanced stuff, and this is where it gets really exciting, because we got 2 really cool new features that we've just put out, one of which I'm particularly excited about because it's something I've been working on a lot, but they're both really amazing, and they solve big problems, which is, this is what Unity's here to do, right? So the first one is called raw data. So you want to compare things that we just haven't thought about, right? We decided that we can only cover a certain amount of stuff. If we had to process every possible combination that you ever might want to look at, a parameter sitting off this event versus a parameter off this event, maybe then cross-correlated to the device ID or the segments, it would be computationally impossible. It's an end-to-end problem. So instead of doing that, and indeed instead of maybe putting a fake query engine in front of you on somewhere, we thought, you know what? Let's just give them their data back. So what we're doing now is we're putting your data, this is a sign-up process, well, and we could talk about how you get signed up to this. But we'll switch this on for you, and suddenly all the data you're sending us, everything you're sending us, goes into an S3 bucket. And now you can download your data from the S3 bucket, you get it raw. Well, what can you do with that? Well, I will tell you, my friends. This is what you can do with it. I'll tell you what you can do with it. This is what you can do with it. Goes down to S3, and then you can just download it. You can put it into your MySQL, or you can put it into Excel, or you can copy it to a database somewhere. We can use, you can barely read that, Amazon Redshift, Redshift, or Snowflake, or BigQuery. Basically, so this is something we're basically working up. You can take this, all this raw data and put it into a database, and now you can start running queries against it. And they can be whatever queries you want, and you are now unshackled from the limitations of our dashboard, right? Our dashboard's pretty cool, but it's also kind of basic. So if you really need to get into it and really start digging in, this is a really awesome way to start getting at your data. Now, this leads me to something even cooler. It will be cool if I can figure out how to click that button. There we go. OK. This is my baby. I want a round of applause just for me right now. OK, so Dylan Jones, who just presented about a year, so 8 days from today, I will celebrate my 1-year anniversary with Unity. Right? I joined the company, and almost immediately I met Dylan. Dylan runs the Unity user group in San Francisco, and he says to me during a meeting, I want heat maps. Mark, get me heat maps. And I'm like, what? I just got here. And so we started working on it, and Dylan helped us out a lot, and I got a great team of guys from San Francisco and Seattle and Montreal. We all kind of started working on it as a Hack Week project, and lo and behold, we've got this product that has now come out. I'm going to hit that again because I want to talk about, whoops, go back. All right. Where is that thing? There we go. OK, so what is a heat map? For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with the concept, basically it's just a visual representation of positional data. That's all it is. What we do is we take your raw data, we download it, we aggregate it, and then we show the areas where a thing happens a lot, in this case position data, user position data, as redder, or it doesn't have to be red, it can be any color you like, redder than the things around it. So here we go. This is actually from a pilot program that we did. We got a bunch of game companies together, including Blackthorn Media, who made this game called Dragonflight, where you basically play as a dragon and you're flying around. It's sort of a flight. It's like a flight combat sim. It's really cool. You'll have to check it out when it's ready. But they actually, I think you can get it on Steam already as a sort of pre-release. Anyway. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. So the idea with this is that you're going to get all this data. You're going to download it, as I said, aggregate it, display it, and understand much more fundamentally than you ever could before about what your players are doing, what they're actually doing within your game. So what, I hear you cry, can heat maps teach us? I'm glad you asked. Thank you. So as I say, we had this pilot program. We had we had about a dozen different studios work with us on different projects. These include 3D, these include 2D, these include VR, right? So we had like this whole range, different people using it for different purposes, and we learned a lot about how they were playing their games and how their players were playing, and they learned lessons that they probably, if they could have learned another way, it would have taken them an enormous amount of time and effort. So this game is by Polykid. It's called Poi, and it's a 3D platformer, as you can see. And what they discovered looking at so this is the heat map overlaid on a section of their game. And what they discovered, I'll just show you this off and on, is that this game is all about jumping. So the event that they were tracking was not player position, it was jumps. And what they were discovering was that some of these jumps, some of the blue squares in the upper left, my left, your right, they were hard to make. They were too hard for the level, and people weren't finishing the level, and therefore they weren't getting through the game, they weren't continuing to play. So they added some help. Add the help, check the heat map again, see if people are getting through. That's the basic operation, and they're able to look at it and say, oh, look, we added the help, now people are getting through. All right, this is Forgotten Ant from Throughline Games. is a 2D sort of platform adventure. And similarly, these guys are looking at player position. But what they're trying to do in this game, I don't know how well you can see that. OK, so here's the thing. The red dots represent high frequency of player position. The yellow dots, medium frequency, or in their case, I guess low, the way they've set it up. The orange one represents not quite as high. It's a medium level. And they're sitting there going, why are people hanging around that spot? That spot, there's nothing in that spot. Each one of these other two spots are places where you can do things. The mirror and the pipe become things that you can actually interact with. And then they went, aha, the ladder. People are trying to get to the ladder. So they remove the ladder, change it. Now they find people aren't wasting their time. It was a headache for the player having to hang around, look at this thing, think they could get at it, and it turned out, oh, no, it was just a piece of decoration. It wasn't a part of the game at all. I love this one. This one, game called Screen Cheat. The idea behind this game is, it's a great idea. It's a first-person shooter, and it's the old idea of the cheat on the multi-monitors where you have to look over at your friend, see how he's doing, except in this game, you actually literally cannot see your enemy on your own screen. You can only see it on their screen. So that's the cheat. However, what they learned very quickly, almost instantly, was they had forgotten to put some colliders in place. And so there was a cheat in their cheat. You're not supposed to get outside the game area, but you could. So they looked at this with the heat maps and went, wow, OK. We have a problem here, so easy fix. But it would have taken, you can imagine, if you didn't have this kind of information, how would you ever know that people were getting outside the game area? So pretty cool stuff. All right, and this brings us to Dragonflight, which is, you saw this in the keynote. At least I assume you all saw it in the keynote. And this really beautiful game. And they were finding that people weren't using most of their map. What you'll see here is if you look at this as we rotate around, is this one corner of that. They have a huge world. It's a gigantic world. And only a tiny corner of it's being used. So they added a fire buff, and you can see the change that just occurred. We'll do it again in a second. So here's an overview. You can see how little of the map they're using. They put in the fire buff. People start going to the island. And so they start implementing fire buffs around or other types of buffs around the game. And they're suddenly able to get people to actually explore it. How long would it take you without analytics to realize? I mean, you could do it with playtesting, but how much do you know about? I mean, playtesting, you get a few players. This is a much bigger way to approach the problem. Like, really grab the data and see it for real. OK, now, having given you all of this fun and interest in all that, I'm hoping that you're interested in seeing the actual Heatmaps product. So what I have over here on the right side of my screen is the plugin. Now, the way you're going to get this plugin, so you're going to sign up for the Heatmaps program. The Heatmaps program comes with raw data as a piece of it because we use it to build it. So if you sign up for Heatmaps, you also get raw data. And what I do is, actually, I'll go to the browser quickly. OK, right here, this is my test project, so you can copy that, and it won't bother me at all. But that I've just highlighted is basically a key to your raw data. You'll get that in your project as soon as you're signed up for raw data. You paste that key into here. I would click the download button if I trusted the internet, and I'd be getting a lot of data, which, by the way, is being output at 2-hour cycles currently. So a whole bunch of text files come down. I import these files. These files get saved into a heat map data folder in your project. I add them in here. I click the process button, which I'm not going to do just this moment because I think I have things the way I want it. And boom, you now have it. That converts all the raw data into a JSON file that the heat map system likes. And then I click load down here, and boom, we've got heat map data. OK, so I want you to observe a few things about this heat map data. The first and probably most important thing is it's in your game. Right? This is not off on a website somewhere. It's not a 2D top-down view. This is in your game, in 3D, in 2D if your game's 2D. And you can just, pick your spot, look around, zoom in. This is a mesh. And like any mesh, it can be saved as a prefab. You could use it in your game. You could even, it's Not necessarily out of the box yet, but this is probably coming to be able to do it as a runtime thing if you wanted to expose your heat maps to your users or maybe your test users. I can do fun things like adjust the color on the fly, because you may want the colors to be the way you want them, not the way I want them. You can change the size of the particles. You can change the shape of the particles. And so for a 2D game, you might find something like that's a little more useful, right? So the whole point of this whole system, and by the way, this system is very clunky. I built all the UI in it, and we need a pass with someone who knows a little more about UI than I do. But we've got the bones are in place. We've got a V1. Hopefully V2 will be a little nicer and cleaner. But you can totally see how you could use this as it is to get lots of information right now. I also want to show you one other thing, which is kind of neat, is now I am going to do some processing. I'm going to click disaggregate time. I'm going to process this. That looked like that worked. Process. Oh, processed again. I meant load. OK, now, you'll notice that the colors mostly changed. Right? There's a few reds I can see in there, but mostly they've all gone green. The reason is I just disaggregated time. That means that before, time, from 0 to whenever in my game, was all bunched up together. And therefore, you'd got lots of events that would happen on top of each other and create lots of density. Now, time is, we're stretching it out. So I'm going to do a fun thing here. I'm going to, there we go. I'm going to hit play and watch the data play. I can scrub it, just like a movie, and I can see where people were at various points in the game. So if time is something that matters and you want to know, well, were players doing this early in the game or were they doing it late in the game, I can totally do that. All right, one thing I've skipped over, and I should go back to it now. I apologize, a few of my things I'm out of order on. So I want to show you how a heat map event works so you know how to send one. Right? Now, what I've got up here is a heat map event, but I want to point out to you something. Here's the heat map event class. It is nothing but a shim on top of our regular custom event. Right? So you technically don't even need my class to send your heat map event. Right? You could just send the custom event. The advantage of using my class is it makes sure your data is constructed in a way that is suitable for the aggregation process we're going to do. So I advise using it, but I want you to just understand that the heat map event is not a real thing. It's really just a shim that's sitting on top of the custom events. All right. So here's a heat map event. All you do is you send a transform.position and optionally a time. And the position, you could send a vector 2, you could send a vector 3. The time is kind of up to you. Is it time.time, time since level load? Maybe you want to do, maybe you have turns and you want to just do it based on turns. That's fine. All this is going to mean in the end is that when I do that disaggregation of time later, that's how your time will appear in the game later on. So time is sort of it's an arbitrary dimension that you can use. We'll probably add to this. We've had a number of people talk to us about sending random values like level as a parameter. So I could say, bot kill with an this arbitrary added bit of level was level 1, because then I could aggregate on that. And you'd be able to, say, separate your level 1s from your level 2s. Might be a useful thing. Someone yesterday I was talking to suggested getting quaternions in there so we can support rotation values, so you could actually have a direction in the heat map as well. Who knows? We want your feedback, right? Give us your information. Let's see what we can do with this. OK, so I showed you all that. I've shown you how to so some smoothing. Oh, so I didn't say enough about this. I want to go back to space smoothing. OK, each one of these points is 20 Unity units wide. OK, this is a big game. It's a lot of space. They have dragons flying all over the place. Big game. Your game might be bigger or a lot smaller. So we've given you a tool within this to smooth space, which is as much to say, I have a point at 0, I have a point at 50. If my setting is 50, then everything between those 2 points I count as the same point for aggregation purposes. Does that make sense? everything from 50.0001, I guess, to 100 would then be the second point, and that allows you to chunk your data in meaningful ways. If you have a flight game, and like I can show you this, maybe even better than telling you. If I take this down to 1 and process, and assuming I can process that much information, that seemed to work OK, and then load, you're going to see, and I'll take the size down. Sorry, the particle size down. Here we go. You're going to see there's an awful lot of dots in there. You end up with an enormous amount. And so we allow you to fix this to a size that suits you in your game. All right. So I showed you that. There's also time smoothing. If you're disaggregating time, you can do exactly the same thing with time that you can do with space. And I showed you running out over time. So we're doing pretty well here. Okie doke. I'll go back to my slides. OK. So that is, actually, I've done pretty well. I'm close to the time I wanted because I want to leave room for questions. So a few things I want to say about this. Number one is sign up for analytics. The easiest way to sign up is to flip the damn switch, right? Flip the switch, you're in. But if you come to the analytics site, which I've put up there, you will get the added bonus of information, documentation, stuff like that we do to help you understand all that you can do with analytics. If you want to sign up for the Heatmaps program, there's a URL for that. I want to mention a couple of things. So right now, the Heatmaps thing is very new, and we are thinking about it as mostly for now a development tool, right? More than a runtime tool. So, which is to say, when you're in prod, when your game is actually live, especially if it's a really big game, we might not want to yet get to the point of saying, hey, let's have 20 million users sending gads of events at us all the time. So for now, we're thinking of it more as a development tool, like use it with your test users rather than in prod. And we'll see how that goes, and things might change. Just like the numbers I talked about earlier, nothing here is set in stone. We're constantly looking to you to guide us, to give us information, to give us your feedback and what you think is necessary. And at some point, hopefully if people use Heatmaps, like Heatmaps, really want them in prod, we'll see what we can do, and hopefully we can make that happen. Right. With that, I have about a little more than 20 minutes left, and I wanted to leave that open for some questions if there are any. So I think I see somebody going to a mic. I see a guy going to a mic.
My project doesn't have player positions. We have views, and I really wanted to keep a heat map of how long they are in a view. So they are in a process, and they're looking at one view, the next view, the next view. Right. And I'd like to be able to keep track of that. I'd love to have a heat map, but it's obviously not a player position. OK, so the heat map absolutely does not have to be player position, right? It can be any. You can send us any event you want. As long as it's got a coordinate attached to it, we can map it. So if the views you're describing have physical positions within your world, then not a problem. Yeah, that's pretty close. And because yours is a wrapper that basically just sends the same event, could we then send the same event with a slightly larger dictionary that includes a little bit more information, like saying?
Yes, you can you can do that now. Remember how I pointed out that the heat map event is just a shim? So you could totally do that. And for now, we will ignore the extra data up to 10 parameters, and we're already using 4 of them, right? X, Y, Z, T. So you have 6 parameters available to you. At some point, we may want to use those parameters, or who knows? I mean, maybe we'll make other changes, but just be conscious of that when you do it. But you can totally do that. Over there, please.
Yeah. I was interested in the raw data API, if you have a streaming version of that. I saw you have the S3 bucket, but what's the latency on sending an event and reading it off? So
we take all that data. It's not streaming. We take that data and we pass it off to S3 currently every 2 hours. OK. So you'll have it pretty quickly, but not quite instantly.
Do you have any plans on improving that latency?
We always have plans.
All right, thank you.
I'm just wondering, with sending off custom events, would there be any plans to maybe make a distinction when we're sending off strings for levels, level names? That seems like something that's going to be really common. And a lot of games have a large count of levels, which is going to mean we're going to use up our points very fast. Yeah. Are there any plans to, or would it be possible to support that a bit differently than other strings and custom event types?
We could talk about that. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I think the easier answer is to say, talk to us, and we can probably up your analytics points,
Sure.
but your analysis points. But yeah, it may be at some point. We've talked about some notions that might support that. Not stuff I can really talk about specifically, but we have some ideas around how we might treat analysis points a little differently, and that might alleviate the problem you're describing.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
So heat maps and procedural content, do you have any thoughts on how best to use that? If your world's changing between runs?
Oh, I see what you mean. Not just at the moment.
Okay.
It's a great question because lots of games are procedurally generated, and I'd want to give it some thought, and it may be very particular to your game. It may be that what you need to do is to have a pseudo-random seed that generates your, but basically a fake randomness to how the procedural stuff happens, so that you can then replicate what happened and understand the heat map you're looking at.
Okay.
So that might be one way to do it.
All right, thanks.
Sure. Sure.
Hey, Mark, I was wondering if it's possible to kind of use the data that's being stored in databases from the analytics sort of back and forth with websites. So say you're throwing your data into a database.
Right.
Can that data drive objects in a website? And
Okay.
can the website change the data to drive objects in Unity?
Okay. The first answer is absolutely yes. There's no reason why, if you have a database with data in it, I mean, you'd have to build the infrastructure. We don't have that infrastructure for you. But if you take the raw data, let's take the example. I mean, I'm blanking on the game. There's a very well-known game. I apologize, I'm blanking on the name that actually shows off their heat maps. So you could totally imagine a case. They put it up on their blog. So you could totally imagine where you were taking that heat map data, for example, any raw data, but the heat map data, putting it into a database, and then drawing that out and generating an image on a website. That wouldn't be a problem. The second bit about putting that data back into Unity is also possible, but then again, there's infrastructure involved. So, and we've talked about some systems like this within the services team to try and help you do things like that. I mean, the really obvious case for something like what you're describing is A/B testing, right? Something happened, we want to do something with it, and then present something different in a dynamic fashion to different players. So there's certainly good reason to want to do stuff like that.
Okay, so it's possible. It's just
It's possible, but
wizardry
somebody's got to build.
involved.
I mean, you're talking about bits of infrastructure that we don't have.
Okay.
Well, okay, there is. I was hinting at that, but I wasn't sure how. Is that public? That is public. Oh yeah, that's okay. I apologize. Yeah, so we have something called Cloud Data, which I guess is in alpha now, and Cloud Data is sort of built around a similar idea like that. There might be some pieces we need to piece together to make that all happen.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So from everything we've seen so far, it looks like heat maps are aggregated data across the course of the entire match or the entire level.
Yep.
Would it be possible to define a time slice so I could say get the heat map from minute 5 to minute 10 or for the first 25% of the match?
I'm so glad you asked. So first thing is we already have that, and I showed it a bit. The time slider allows you to do that already. The second bit is that you can take it because the data is being thrown out every 2 hours, is you can do that by dates as well as or hours, like of real time as well as amounts of playtime.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Hi there.
Hey, for heat maps, what about segment data? If I want to know about people on a certain platform or came from a certain group.
Okay, it's a great question. So you're asking about segmentation of the heat map data. We are not yet doing that, but I guarantee you that thinking about that that's not something we've forgotten. It's something we just haven't gotten to yet. We don't know when it'll happen, but it's something we're definitely talking about.
Cool.
Would it be possible for the data that's sent to the S3 bucket to have a time frame longer than 2 hours, like for our server load?
A time frame longer than 2 hours. So you mean that you want to basically, you don't want it every 2 hours, you want it maybe every 8?
4 hours or something.
No, I'm getting a shaking head from my boss here. I think that right now that's not on the cards. Who knows in the future? But right now, that's not. Right now, it's basically a global. We do it for everyone who's getting raw data at that time frame.
All right, I'll tell my server guys. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. It's going to tell on me.
You mentioned the possibility of showing the player their heat maps in real time.
Yeah, sure.
In the game. I'd like to see a more general version of that where you can show any custom event, like to show players how their choices compare to other players.
Okay. So you want to see the heat map of an individual play, but I can share that. Like I can choose as a player to share that with another.
Not necessarily a heat map, but like I don't know if you've ever played any of the Telltale adventure games, but like they'll show you, oh, like you killed this player, but 47% of other players killed the other player, you know, or the other character.
All I can say about that, I guess, is that it's not something I know that we thought of particularly.
Okay.
It's an interesting idea, and it would be really cool. Understand that to some extent, analytics is much more, generally speaking, around you finding out about how your player's playing,
Right,
rather
I
than
understand
feeding the
that.
data back the other way.
Yeah.
But it's not as if, as I've already alluded to, it's not as if we've never thought to do those sorts of things. So maybe once we're a little more mature, we'll start thinking down that road.
All right, thanks.
Sure. Sir.
I was just curious how extensible the editor portion of heat maps are. Like you're showing off in there the inspector
Yeah.
and the custom editor view, and that was,
I
haven't heard anything about
really happy you asked that because I forgot to say this. The code for the heat map inspector is going to be released. It will be released to you. So you will be able to crawl through every line of it. And importantly, in regards to that question, I presupposed when I wrote this that you would want to write your own renderers. So there's a one-line swap out to, as long as you meet the terms of an interface, there's a one-line swap out for your renderer to plug in where my renderer currently is. So if you don't like cubes, you want spheres, maybe you have hills and you want to actually have your heat map, sit right on the hills, write a renderer for it. And if it's a really good one, like if it's something you want to share, issue a PR. This is going to be like a GitHub repo. So issue a pull request, and we'd love to incorporate your work. We'd really love this to be a collaborative project.
Cool. Well, I think this is amazing, first of all.
Thank you.
Really, really cool. I was wondering how this looks to the user. So when they're playing the game, for example, do they have to opt in to have their data sent?
Okay.
And then secondly, what if they're playing and they lose their internet connection and then it comes back? Like,
Right.
how robust is it?
Okay, both very good questions. Actually, I'll handle the second one because it's easier, which is what happens if you go offline, if the player goes offline. If the player goes offline, we cache up those events, and then they get sent at the next available opportunity. Generally speaking, there's very little packet loss with that. It can happen if they go offline and they're offline for 6 months, or they delete the app or something. But generally speaking, there's very little significant data loss from that. The question about so analytics today, and maybe forever, I don't honestly know, but right now is a per app opt-in. Once your app is using analytics, everyone's using analytics. We don't, now, you can choose not to send custom events if you want to give, so if that piece you don't want to send, but all that generalized data that I talked about at the beginning, that's all going to get sent. And you can't stop that on a per user basis.
So the player never even knows if the data is
Generally
sent.
speaking, that is true.
Okay.
Honestly, between you and me, I think that these days people kind of expect that their data is being tracked somehow or another.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I was just wondering if there's like an interface.
Yeah, but there's no interface in which they have to check and accept or anything like that.
Cool.
We are, by the way, I'll just mention this in case anyone's curious. We're COPA compliant, so if you want to make a COPA compliant game, we can make that work.
Cool. Thank you.
You bet.
Hi.
Hi.
So a quick question. Obviously, games change over time, and the custom events that we send are going to have to change. But you said also that we shouldn't have different parameters on them. So what would you recommend to handle versioning?
Yeah, I think that as your game versions, what you want to do is, if you need to change the actual event, what I was saying about consistency was really around like an individual event having the same set of parameters. Give it a new name. Make it a different event that covers the new case if you need to do that. With raw data, you've got a lot more freedom because, well, you can just sub-select out the ones from before a time, or it's a query. Run whatever query you want. But with the built-in dashboard stuff, we're going to remember those events, the events. And so if you need a new event, if you need your event to change, the better answer is to create a new event to handle the case. Give it a new name.
Thank you.
You bet. I don't see anyone else. Anyone? Oh, here we go. I still got 10 minutes here, people. I'll keep talking.
So you mentioned when you send an event and the network fails, you retry. So do you do data deduplication on your side then to?
Michael, what's the current status of data deduplication? It's okay. So the answer is no.
All right.
But we are working on dealing with data deduplication.
Okay, thank you.
All right. It's an important issue for us. We've talked about it a lot. I just wasn't sure about the status. Looks like one more person coming up here?
Early on, we usually have multiple users using a single device when you're doing early testing.
Right.
Is there any way to separate out and send a message saying, hey, stop tracking this as one user and start the next user?
Not at present.
Okay.
All the data is based on device IDs, but when you get to the production level, that shouldn't be as big a deal as it is in testing. Sir.
What is the performance cost for using analytics if you turn it on?
It's very light. We've actually, that was one of, there are people within Unity who would never have allowed it on board if we hadn't made it incredibly light. It basically runs in the background. We've had literally no reports of anybody dealing with performance issues that they believe are related to analytics. It's not that we're perfect or anything, but it was a super high priority for us that the memory load and the performance load be as trivial as possible, and we're pretty sure we've achieved that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hi, I'm already thinking about how to bastardize this system.
Yes! Success.
So what you're talking about is analyzing the levels as the players play it over time after it's been released. Have you thought about using this for pre-production, analyzing levels before a player even touches it? For instance, I'm thinking analyzing line of sight coverage distances or openness of a level.
So some people have spoken to us about using it for AI balancing and things like that, which would sort of fit into a similar category. So you could certainly imagine doing that. I mean, at the end of the day, all you're doing is sending some data, and then we're bringing the data and turning it back to you. So, I mean, line of sight's an interesting one in that it's not a point, it's a vector.
Right.
And because it's a vector, maybe that's a little trickier, but it's not to say it's impossible. If I did the thing that I mentioned about adding quaternions in, then all you need to do is create a renderer that shows the vector lines.
Well, what I'd like to do is send a position with another scalar attribute on it. Like this position is 70, whatever that means.
Well, we've already discussed the fact that you can certainly add extra parameters on. I would then, what we need to do is we need to maybe think about better ways of handling cases like that, because you're now describing just a rendering case I hadn't taken into account. Good work.
Yeah,
I mean, I bet you with a little hacking between you and me, we could probably make that happen.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
You bet.
Just curious, are the custom events for the analytics fired from inside the editor, or are they only fired on executed builds?
I'm sorry, say the question one more time.
So if I run my game inside the editor and I hit custom analytics points, are those recorded?
Yes.
So that they're alive?
Even in the editor, yes.
Okay.
In fact, our basic integration step is flip the switch, hit play, and go to our website and ensure that you're seeing the data flow, because we want to make sure that you've got everything working.
Excellent. So you could write custom queries just to keep track of internal tool use, things like that?
Well, maybe. So here's the thing. What you've just said something that's a little different. When you talk about tools, now what you're really asking me about, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about being able to track data, say, by someone who's using something, well, in multiple projects. What's that?
Somebody downloaded a tool off the asset store, and he's selling it. He wants to know how they're using the tool.
Right. Is that a correct impression of what you just said?
That is a possibility.
Okay, great. That is what, it's what I assumed you meant, and I was sort of dancing around it, but here's the thing. As much as we want to, like, totally, we want you as like an asset developer, a tools developer, to be able to get analytics, just like games developers. There's some questions about that we just haven't resolved internally. They're not really technical so much as informational, corporate type stuff. Like, what should a person expect if I download something from the asset store? Should I expect that it's able to give information on what people are doing in the game or in the editor? Hard to know, and we haven't yet solved that question. It's really much more of a human question than it is a technical question. And so right now, the technical answer is no, you can't do that on a multi-project basis. The data is all tied to the individual project.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Thank you.
How long have you been standing there? Because I didn't even realize there was a microphone over there.
Just a few minutes.
Okay, I apologize.
No problem. I was just wondering, is there a way to show like the count of a custom event per user session on the graph?
Count of a custom event per user session? The answer to that is no, not at the moment. With raw data, of course, you could form up queries to do that,
Yeah.
but our graph on the dashboard doesn't. This is kind of the whole point, is there's just a limited number of things we show on that dashboard right now. So no, not at the moment.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? No? Okay. Thank you very much. It's been great to talk to you. Please sign up.